Ask yourself this question. What to you makes Doctor Who great? So great that it's managed to endure since 1963. The monsters? There have certainly been some great ones and plenty of not so great ones. The special effects? Let's be honest. With the best intentions, they've rarely been at the forefront of what television can achieve. The acting? Absolutely. Some incredible performances have come from the show, particularly from the actors who carried the mantle of the Doctor. Even then, Doctor Who hasn't exactly been short of the occasional questionable performance. So what is it then? Perhaps it's the show's ability to tell stories, a true cornerstone of all fiction. The ability to entertain, engage, and move audiences through imagination and emotion. And with Doctor Who's limitless potential, its capacity for storytelling is almost endless. But that raises another question. What is its greatest story? You could look across decades of examples from the classic era right through to the modern day and find many contenders. But one stands out. Released in 2014, 51 years after the show first aired, it offered audiences something fresh, something different, and above all, something deeply about Doctor Who itself. That story is Listen. A story that begins with nothing and expands into something that captures the very essence of why Doctor Who continues to fascinate and endure. So let's take a look and ask if Listen is Doctor Who's greatest story hiding in plain sight. Listen begins with the Doctor pondering a simple but unsettling question. Why do people talk to themselves when they're alone? He theorizes that maybe people instinctively know that they're truly not alone, that somewhere, hidden just out of sight, evolution may have produced a creature that has perfected the art of hiding, and now he wants to prove it. The Doctor enlists Clara's help, though she's preoccupied, still reeling from a disastrous first date with fellow teacher Danny Pink. But together they begin to explore his theory, starting with one of humanity's most universal nightmares, the fear of something hiding under the bed. Using the TARDIS, they attempt to delve into Clara's past, but instead they arrive at a seemingly unrelated children's home in Gloucester. There they encounter a frightened child, and the question lingers, is there a creature that the Doctor has been searching for here, or is it a child's imagination running wild beneath the bed covers? From there the story escalates. The Doctor and Clara journey to the end of the universe itself, where they meet Orson Pink, a distant descendant of Danny's. The Doctor believes that in this desolate place, the ultimate creature of hiding might finally reveal itself. But when the experiment goes wrong, the Doctor is left unconscious, and Clara takes control of the TARDIS, stumbling into a moment that redefines everything. She finds herself in a barn, comforting a terrified child, and realizes the origins of the Doctor's fear may become right there. Structurally, Listen unfolds almost like a play in three acts, with Clara's date subtly threading through each. It's a deceptively simple framework. You have the children's home, the end of the universe, and the barn. Yet each act peels back another layer of fear, connection, and identity. The first act grounds the story into something recognizable, childhood fear. The fear of the dark, of the unknown, of what might be lurking beneath the bed. It's a fear that everyone has felt, and Listen takes that familiarity and makes it deeply personal, not just for the child we see on screen, but for the Doctor and Clara themselves. The second act expands that idea to its furthest limit, literally to the end of time. What began as a bedtime fear becomes a cosmic question. The Doctor's search for answers mirrors humanity's own curiosity, our need to find meaning in the unknown, even if it means comforting the things that frighten us the most. And finally, the barn, the moment that ties it all together. Without spoiling the revelation, it's here that Listen redefines what the story has really been about. What started as a hunt for monsters quietly becomes a reflection on vulnerability, on how fear, loneliness, and comfort shapes who we are. What makes this structure so effective is its simplicity. There are no sprawling alien invasions, no armies, no explosions, just three settings, three emotional heartbeats, and three characters whose interactions drive the story forward. The Doctor, Clara, and Danny. Each one is essential to the Doctor's obsession. Clara's empathy and Danny's humanity entwine to form a story that's much about people as it is about mystery. Listen doesn't rely on spectacle, It builds atmosphere through silence, unease, and suggestion, proving that sometimes the most compelling Doctor Who stories aren't about what you can see, but what you can feel lurking just out of sight. One of the things Doctor Who has always excelled at is channeling fear, not just through the unearthly, but through the everyday. The Daleks, for example, embody the ideology of fascism, something that had felt chillingly familiar to audiences in 1963, less than 2 decades after the Second World War. The Autons turned the ordinary shop window mannequins into something terrifying, their blank faces becoming symbols of mass violence on the high street. When Doctor Who returned in 2005, this concept of finding horror in the ordinary became a defining hallmark of the show. Suddenly, a child softly asking, "Are you my mummy?" Statues that only move when you aren't looking, and even shadows that could kill you become some of the most memorable and unsettling moments in modern Doctor Who. It's no coincidence that all three of these examples were written by Steven Moffat, the same mind behind Listen and the showrunner at the time. But Listen takes this approach to its purest form. It strips fear back to something universal, the feeling that you're not alone when you should be. The idea that something might be hiding just out of sight, beneath the bed, behind the door, or in the corner of your eye. And that, maybe, just maybe, is watching you. What makes this so effective is that Listen doesn't focus on a monster at all. It focuses on fear itself, how it defines us, how it shapes our personalities, and how it influences the way we see the world. Or in this case, fear through the eyes of a child initially, which heightens the factor. But the art is also presented of how it also digs into humans' primal instinct and acts as a superpower. The story becomes quiet study in human psychology. There's nothing theatrical about it. The fear isn't what we see, it's what's implied. What was under the bed? What caused the knocking at the end of the universe? The story never confirms either, and that uncertainty is exactly what keeps us engaged. Listen doesn't just show us fear, it makes us confront our own. At its core, Listen can be seen as a story about storytelling itself, a reflection of Steven Moffat's own creative process and his fascination with how imagination shapes perception. The entire idea for the episode came from a dream Moffat once had, in which something unseen grabbed his leg from under the bed. It's the same dream that the Doctor later describes, a universal nightmare that has supposedly repeated itself throughout history. Moffat wanted to create what he described as a chamber piece, a minimalist story that relied not on spectacle or special effects, but on atmosphere, performance, and the power of suggestion. It's a story that asks, what happens when the Doctor is left alone, bored, and trapped within his own thoughts? That question becomes the foundation for everything that follows. We watch the Doctor spiral deeper into obsession, his curiosity turning inward, his imagination becoming both his greatest tool and his greatest threat. From this idea comes the episode's unique structure. That story built on perception. Things we see or hear may not be more than the inventions of the restless mind, or perhaps something we've been overlooking all along. Listen blurs the line between what's real and what's imagined, using the unknown as its narrative engine. Throughout the story, storytelling itself becomes a recurring motif. The Doctor's theory, the folklore of the creature under the bed, and Clara's own use of power of a bedtime story to reassure two different children, each demonstrates how we use stories to explain the unexplainable. Stories can scare us, inspire us, or comfort us, but ultimately they give meaning to what we don't understand. In that way, the Doctor may serve as a metaphor for Moffat himself, a restless storyteller forever searching for the perfect narrative. Just as the Doctor seeks a creature that may or may not exist, Moffat seeks a universal story, one that captures both the darkness and the wonder of the human imagination. Listen not only becomes an episode of Doctor Who, but meditation on why we tell stories at all. As much as Listen acts as a reflection on Steven Moffat's own creative process, it also delves deeply into the character of the Doctor, revealing a rare moment of vulnerability beneath his usual bravado. Each incarnation of the Doctor has displayed their own unique blend of eccentricity, warmth, and darkness. Peter Capaldi's 12th Doctor channels elements of his predecessors, the authority of William Hartnell, the alien unpredictability of Tom Baker, and the brashness of Colin Baker, while bringing something entirely his own. This Doctor is sharp, unfiltered, and often brutally honest. His remarks towards humanity, and especially Clara, can come across as cold or even cruel, but beneath that hardened exterior lies a profound sense of loneliness. At this point in the series, Clara has tried to step back into a more normal life as a schoolteacher, creating a subtle distance between herself and the Doctor. Left alone, the Doctor begins to spiral into obsession. His theory of a creature that's perfected the art of hiding becomes much more a symptom of his solitude as it does his intellect. The opening scene where he debates his theory aloud in an empty TARDIS perfectly captures this isolation. It's as if his own imagination has turned against him. When Clara does return, her presence immediately grounds him. She challenges him, questions him, and brings humanity to his detached logic, acting as both conscience and companion. Throughout Listen, she reins him in, offering moments of warmth and perspective that contrast his more cynical tendencies. What this episode ultimately suggests is that all of the Doctor's eccentricity, his restlessness, his arrogance, even his compulsion to keep moving, may stem from fear. The fear of stillness, the fear of being alone, the fear of what's hiding under the bed. For all his courage and intelligence, the Doctor is still running from something. His endless travels through time and space can be seen as elaborate acts of avoidance, a way to stay one step ahead of the very fears he can't bring himself to confront. By the end of Listen, Clara herself points out that the Doctor's search for this hidden creature may simply be his way of rationalizing his own anxieties, his refusal to admit that even he, the great Doctor, can feel fear. And that's what makes this episode so powerful. It reminds us that bravery isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to keep moving forward in spite of it. For all the Doctor's theorising about an entity with the perfect ability to hide in plain sight, and for all its attempts to prove its existence, neither we as the audience, nor the Doctor, nor Clara, are any wiser by the end of the story. It's never confirmed whether the figure hiding beneath the bedsheet in the children's home was truly this unseen creature, or simply another child playing a prank on young Danny Pink. We never learn if the knocks echoing around Orson Pink's ship at the end of the universe were caused by changes in pressure, or something generally out there, waiting to reveal itself. But that's precisely what makes Listen so special. Had the episode revealed the entity outright, it would have undermined the story's entire purpose. The mystery would have become just another monster of the week, something to be defeated rather than something to be understood. Even if such a creature did exist, there's nothing to suggest that it would have been malevolent, which raises the question, what would have been the point of giving it form at all? Instead, its existence is left beautifully unresolved, neither proven nor disproven, resting entirely on interpretation. It's up to us, just as it's up to the Doctor and Clara, to decide whether we witness the presence of a hidden entity or simply the tricks of perception and imagination. With no physical entity ever truly implied or present in Listen, the true meaning behind the story is ironically hidden in plain sight. It's a story about people and how they perceive, react to, and are shaped by the world around them. Listen takes us on a journey through the fears and vulnerabilities of its three key players, the Doctor, Clara, and Danny Pink. The Doctor, perhaps more than anyone, is afraid to admit what he's afraid of what hides in the dark, or worse, of living a lonely existence. Danny Pink, both as a child and an adult, reflects a different kind of fear. As a boy, Rupert, as he was then known, is terrified of what might be under the bed. As an adult, Danny fears something more human, letting people in, trusting them, being seen. Then there's Clara, not fearful in the same way, but deeply aware of how her actions ripple others' lives. When she comforts young Rupert and gives him the toy soldier named Dan the Soldier Man to protect him through the night, she unknowingly shapes his future. A small act of kindness that echoes throughout time, influencing who Danny ultimately becomes. By the story's end, Clara begins to realise her influence may reach even further, that she may have unwittingly planted the very seed of the Doctor's lifelong search for the creature that hides but is never seen. It's a humbling revelation, and one that allows her to challenge the Doctor with a truth that he rarely admits, that even he, the great hero of time and space, is allowed to be scared. And that is the quiet brilliance of Listen, and for Doctor Who itself. The show endures because it doesn't shy away from fear, it accepts it as part of what makes us human. It reminds us that fear doesn't always have to hold us back, Sometimes it's what drives us forward. I began this video by asking whether Listen is Doctor Who's greatest story hiding in plain sight. It's not a great story because of memorable monsters, iconic moments, or dazzling theatrics. It's great because it's a story about Doctor Who itself. It's about writers, about fear, and ultimately about us. By the end of Listen, you're left questioning your own fears and how you face them. And that's one of the greatest achievements any piece of fiction can have, to leave you reflecting on yourself. This effect could only come from the craft of Steven Moffat and the precision of its delivery. Moffat's most defining Doctor Who episodes are those that conjure something profound out of nothing, that build fear and emotion from absence and implication. In that sense, Listen might just be his most masterfully written story. It channels fear not through a monster, but imagination, memory, and silence. Peter Capaldi brings this concept to life perfectly. He embodies a doctor who is at once fierce, brash, and unfiltered, yet deeply vulnerable and quietly afraid. He captures that paradox of an alien who observes humanity whilst never quite understanding it. Jenna Coleman gives Clara the emotional grounding that makes this episode work. She treats the character with the respect she's earned, as someone still adapting to this new doctor, yet also strong enough to hold him accountable, to make him see the value of humility and compassion. Samuel Anderson also shines here. As Danny Pink, he begins to reveal the layers beneath the surface. An ex-soldier burdened by guilt, learning to trust again, finding humanity through love. As Orson Pink, he mirrors the Doctor's loneliness at the edge of the universe, a man so isolated that even his imagination becomes something to fear. Listen might not be my personal favourite Doctor Who story, but it's undeniably brilliant. A piece of television defined by thoughtful, deliberate craft. The writing is meticulous and the direction quiet yet precise. For a story where almost nothing happens, it's astonishing how completely it draws you in. You'd be hard-pressed to find a more elegantly written episode in Doctor Who, one that relies not on spectacle, but on substance. By the end, you realise it doesn't really matter whether the creature ever existed. What matters is the journey, the fears explored, the truths revealed, and the characters transformed along the way. And that's why I believe Listen might just be Doctor Who's greatest story. It delivers so much with so little, yet with immense heart, drama, and imagination. It's the story that tells all stories. But what do you think about Listen? Maybe you agree that it is perhaps the greatest story ever written in Doctor Who. Maybe you think the lack of alien presence ruins the story's ability and its deliverance. Let me know in the comments below. But for now, it's the end. The moment has been prepared for.